Hey guys, how's it going? So today what I'm going to be doing is, first of all, I'm going to go to my courses and then I'm going to go to the assignment tab. Now inside of the assignment tab, you will see that we have exercise 7, which is import assets. And as last time, we're going to be doing a lecture slash exercise for the rest of the class. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be starting to import assets into the Unreal Engine so we can use them in Engine. For that purpose, we have that starter here. So I'm going to click on that starter. That is going to take me to the content. And then under content exercises, this is where it's going to be found, right? So I have E05 and E06 master software engines. That is because the name is wrong. I'm going to be changing that later. But the point is that this is going to be the starter for that file. So with that, I'm going to minimize this thing and I'm going to unzip my software engines. So the same thing that we did last time is I'm going to be starting with a new project folder here. So I'm going to have a content and I'm going to be making this one new folder. This is going to be called IGME. Inside of IGME, I'm going to be doing a new folder. The new folder is going to be IGME 219. And inside of this one, I'm going to be creating a new folder again. Now this folder is going to be where I'm going to hold my master material. You'll see what that means in a second. So this is going to be materials. Okay, now inside of materials, what I'm going to be doing is creating a new material. So right click on that and say material. This is exactly what we did last time. So I'm going to say m underscore and I will call this master. What I'm going to be doing with this one is I will be creating some variables that are going to let me change values. So first off, this shader, it's going to be applicable to anything in my scene, right? Except for the terrain. Remember that from last class. So I'm going to hold the letter or the number 3 on my keyboard and then I'm going to click. The same can be achieved if you write this. I think it's called vector 3. It's const vector 3. That's why it is. So it's exactly the same thing. It's just a shortcut. But yeah, holding 3 and clicking on in here is going to let you move it. So I'm going to connect that to base color and then I'm going to save. So my material at this point is completely black. It is really easy and simple material. It's going to have just the basic color and it's going to be connected here. So let me make this window a bit smaller. I still want it in the same place. So I'm just going to be bring it to the side, drag and drop that into the mesh. So when I hit play once again, I'll see that I have the black material applied to that thing. But the point that I'm trying to make is I really want to make a material that I can just start modifying on the go. So Unreal Engine has a really nice way of doing this. I can right click on the material and say create material instance. Now, as this is a material instance, the naming convention is going to say that it starts with MI master. In this case, I'm going to call that MI red. And then I will just apply that to this little bit that I have in here. Now, there's a kind of an issue. It's not really an issue, but I'm going to explain. The material is not red, right? So I should be able to just double click on that and then I should be able to just change the color. But if you take a look at this window, it kind of looks different than the one that I have here. And the reason is this one is a material and this one is a material instance, meaning that anything that happened to the master is going to modify the children, right? So, okay, I want a red material. I can just change the color that is applied into the master. And when I hit save, that is going to modify the children as well, right? So my children is red, but that is not really what I wanted. What I wanted is a material that I can just modify a color and then I can apply something in here, right? Like let's say I want to have now a new material instance and this material instance is going to be called MI green. So I want to apply the green to the borders. But once again, I have this issue. When I open the material, there's nothing in here that I can change in order to change the red color. So you will be thinking, well, just make a new material and be gone with it. The thing is, if later on I have a more complex material that I have something glowing or I have to have something that is just, like vibrating, changing the UV coordinates, there's a lot of really cool things that I can do with materials. But if I copy and paste every single time and make a new material, then I might lose something in the functionality. This is the whole purpose of object-oriented programming in the first place, right? You create a base and then you start modifying the individual properties of the individual objects. Take that in account and think about that in terms of colors now. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to take this red and I'm going to make that into a parameter, which is basically a variable. So I'm going to say convert to parameter. And this thing I'm going to call base color. So this new tab is going to appear here. This is the default value that I want to have for that red color. In reality, I want to have that as a black. and this is just going to be my default material. And then when I go back to the red tab, I'm going to have a new thing that pops in here, and that is going to be my base color. You see that this wasn't here before, same for this one. So if I want to click on that, I want to be able to just change the colors. I first need to enable the flag, right? So now that I have the flag, I can modify that by value and just say, well, green is this one, or I can click on the color picker and then just choose the green. So I'm gonna save. This is gonna save way faster than the other one because this one has to process some of the shaders if I do changes, and this one is really just like change a variable in that shader and that's it. So sorry, I meant to do that backwards. This is going to be my green. So it's easier to change the value like that. And then this one is going to be my red. So red and green. And just with that, I have my master material that I can just apply to these things. See, this one has the master material, so that's why it's in black. That still is a material, so I can apply it like always, like usually. And the default value was black for that. So now I have that and it's running on the scene. So that, in a nutshell, is how you create an instance of a material. Now I'm going to delete these two because that's not really what I want to create in this material. What I want is to create a material that I can apply some transformations and some things into. And so what I need to do now is inside of my folder, I'm going to be creating a new folder and a subfolder. And actually, I'm going to be doing this on the top. This is going to be a new folder. This folder is going to be called master sword. And inside of master sword, I'm just going to hit import. And I'll look for my desktop and I will go for master sword for engines, and I'm going to be taking these 3 files in. So there's these guys are just supposed to show you what a master sword is going to look like, but these are going to be the actual files that I'm going to be applying as a texture. So I'm going to hit open. That's going to bring these guys in. And there's 2 types of textures out there. This is a regular sRGB texture. As you can see, there's something here on the side that says it was imported as a normal map, which is really what I want, right? Remember our maps and textures lecture. This is going to be giving me some more information about how the light is going to be bouncing out of my surface. But this is an sRGB texture, so this is fine here. So I'm just going to hit save on that one. Now, if I open this one, you will notice that this is not ticked in because this is not an sRGB texture. An sRGB texture is going to have a pixel value in the red, green, and blue channels from 0 to 1. So in reality, I can translate that to these guys are going to get translated to, they're just going to be either values from 0 to 1 in the green channel, in the blue channel, and so forth. So the idea here is that they get normalized, right? They're going to be values that go between 0 and 1. In the case of the normal map, they don't. They really can go beyond 1. This normal map, remember, is going to be showing you how the light is going to be bouncing out. So it might actually go below 0. And in terms of textures, it doesn't really have a lot of sense to have a color that it's less than 0 value. There's no such thing as negative colors, but this is sort of the way that you're using this texture to store this information. All of this is really relevant because the very last one is an ORM texture. This one, if I open it, it is going to be included in the sRGB space. We actually needed to have it in the sRGB space if we want to be able to see it in an editor. Now, this preview is going to be normalizing it between 0 and 1, and so I could potentially see it. But in reality, each one of these channels is going to be representing something. This ORM texture is going to contain the occlusion map, the roughness map, and the metallic map. So basically meaning what is going to be metallic in the map, what is going to have the roughness in the map, and what is going to be ambient occlusion in the map. So all of those 3 things in conjunction are going to be making this texture. Instead of wasting or trying to import 3 texture and wasting all the channels, this texture was created with each channel having a separate meaning. So occlusion, roughness, and metallic, all of them in a single texture. And because of that, I also know that these values go below 0 and above 1. So I know that this is not in this sRGB space. If I have this as RGB space in these kind of textures, this is going to look super weird. Once we start taking a look at texturing processes and other things, this is going to be really, really relevant. For now, I'm just giving you the texture, but this is something that can affect your workflow. So I'm going to be hitting save here, and I should have all I need for this, except that I don't have a material that is going to handle these textures. So normally what you would have to do is create a texture in Photoshop or something, and that is going to be saving you the basic information. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I will be creating these textures, and I'll show you what how to use them. So Photoshop. And so with Photoshop open, I'm going to go to File, and I will say New, and I will make a small file. This is going to be just a small texture. This is going to be 25. Actually, let's do a 32 by 32 pixels. It's going to be really small. I'm going to be making a couple of textures. So this one is going to be black. Sure. Let's hit Create. It's going to be a really small file. Save as. We can make this programmatically, by the way, but I'm going to make it simple for the class. So this is going to be a PNG, and this is going to be black. Okay, we're going to be making yet another one file. Actually, let's see if I just change the color here and do a flood. So that, and that's the background. I cannot change that. That's white. So I'm going to do that layer here. So in the layer, it's white. So file, save as, in my computer as a PNG. This is going to be white. And let's do I think that's good enough, but let's make another one. So file, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the textures that I have. Open the master sort. I'm going to look for an empty space. So I'm going to be taking a look at these. I'm going to use the eyedropper to get the exact color I want. So this one. And I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to paint over that with the color. One second, not letting me add that color here. What I think I can do is flood the whole thing in that color. Wait, it is still white. Why is it white? I don't know. And then I'm going to go image and then edit. Oh, it's an image size. And I'm going to make that the same. Let's do 128 for this one. 128 by 128. Okay, and then file, save as, and save on my computer. This one is going to be the underscore normal. There. Okay, now that I have that, I'm gonna go back to, it probably was the sRGB space that I was talking about, that it wouldn't let me flood with that value that I just read. So this is a better route. So I'm gonna go into this thing once again, and IGME 219 materials, actually IGME 219, and in here I'm gonna make a new folder. This folder is going to be called textures. And inside of textures, I'm going to be hitting import, and I will be importing the ones that I have on my desktop. So black, white, and for those two, because the other one is in a subfolder. Import. And where is my texture? The normal PSD. Oh, I saved it as a PSD. That's why. So file, save as. In my computer, let's put that on the desktop, and I want that as a PNG. Save. I don't even know if I can import a PSD. So normal. There you go. So I'm gonna go back to my materials, and I'm gonna reopen the material master. Excuse me. Then I'm gonna go back down to textures, and what I'm gonna be doing here is I'm gonna be modifying the individual properties. So I have the base color property, but I don't really care about that. I'm gonna be driving these with the textures. So I'm gonna drag and drop this texture here. So it is going to be white. I'm gonna do the sRGB here, and then I'm gonna drag and drop black and normal. Okay, so now from black on the red, I'm going to take that to ambient occlusion. From the green, I'm going to be taking that to the roughness. And from the blue one, I'm going to be taking that to the metallic. Now on the normal sRGB, I'm going to be taking that to normal. And I'm going to hit save, and actually, I want to make sure that this was imported as a normal map. So open that. Yes, it's not in the sRGB space. That's exactly how I want it. Okay. Now going back to my material, there's a couple of things that I want to take a look at, and I shouldn't have closed it, but here you go. This is going to get a new parameter. This is going to be called base color. This one is going to convert to new parameter, convert to parameter, and this is going to be called ORM, as in occlusion, roughness, and metallic. And this one is going to get a new parameter called normal. So that way I can create instance materials out of these guys. So I'm going to close that. And again, this is whenever I have a more complex material than this is going to be super useful, but now I have my master material. So I'm going to go down to the master sort path, and I already have these textures. So what I can do is create a new material instance. So I'm going to right click on that and then go to my materials and say material instance. So this is going to be an MI, and I'm going to call that master sort, and I'm going to open that file. So now that I have that, it is going to basically ask me, what do you want this to be a material out of? So I need to select the parent. In this case, I have a bunch of things in here because I started with the starter content. So I'm going to call this M master, which is the name of that material, and you'll see that I have the properties. So I'm going to enable base color, normal, and ORM. So I will drag and drop these on the white, which is the base color, these on the normal, and this one on the ORM. Take a look at the texture, how it's changing as soon as I drop this. See, now it has more properties and it's more interesting to look at. So I have that, and that should be it for it. Now I'm going to import the master sort, but I'm going to choose the option of showing or keeping the materials or importing the materials, just to show you the difference. So I'm going to import import to here, and I'm going to look for that folder. I'm going to go to the master sort, and now I'm going to reset this to the default so you get to see all of the changes. Really important, you need to enable the convert scene unit. This is not enabled by default because it assumes that you are modeling at real-time scale or a real scale. So I am going to be enabling that. If needed, I might need to change the size of these, but I'll show you what that means in a second. And now this is create a new material. This is the important part for the material. Import textures, well, maybe I have no way to disabling that, but I already have the textures imported. So as soon as I try to import textures that are already imported in the engine, it is going to prevent it to do that. So it's going to search for that location. That's what this one means. It's like, oh, well, do you want to create where do you want to search for the textures if they are already here? So say they are in the same material, in the same folder. So create new materials. I'm going to be creating a new material. I'm going to just hit import, and that is going to have that M master sort and MI master sort. MI is the material that was created. So in theory, I can just bring here, and then this is going to be all white. I would technically need to go here and connect this sRGB to base color, this thing to the normal map, and the same thing here for the ambient occlusion and the roughness and the metallic. Now, the issue, once again, is that this is a really simple material. What will happen if I have something like, oh, there's a glow in the master sort, right? I don't have any way to do that here, like at least not dynamically. There's a lot of dynamic things that I can do in here. So for instance, I can say sign, and then I can just connect these to a multiply. So I can say something like multiply, and I can multiply that by a base color. So sign of, let's say, time. The sign of time is going to get here, and then I'm going to multiply that by 1. And then this, actually not by 1. Yeah, sure, by 1. Why not? And then I'm going to be taking these to the emissive color, and then I'm going to save it, right? So what's going to happen is this thing is going to be applying that sign transformation. Do you see that? It's doing something. The issue really is that the file or the material is just going to be applied to this one. If I wanted to do something more complex that I want to have consistent between different materials, then there's no way I can do that. I need to do that through a master material. And that's why we are not really going to be working with materials that just treated like this. So I'm going to disable that, and it's going to warn me, hey, something is using this material. I'm going to say, okay, fine. force delete, open the master sword, and then just drag and drop it, and that's it. You have the master sword. Now the master sword, as you can see, it's pretty small. I'm gonna be fixing two things at once, but first I wanted to make sure that the sword is here. So I'm gonna put it in my world, and that is super small. So I'm gonna be scaling it up just to make sure that is the appropriate size. So I think something like this should be fine. Let me move it up. I'm gonna hit play, and let's see, I'm gonna have it right next to my character. That's a good enough size, right? So I just eyeballed it. That's fine for this exercise. But this is 15, 15, and 15. Okay, so one thing that I can do to begin with is take out the master sword. I already had that, but I'm gonna show you how to kill two virtual and stuff, right? So I'm gonna hit import, and I'm gonna import the master sword once again. Keep in mind the converts in unit, but there's two things that I'm gonna do first. Import uniform size, this is going to be 15, and then where it says create materials, I can say create a new material instance, and then it's going to say, what do you want me to do? Well, I will be making, or I want you to create a parent from mi master. So I have master. Oh, what do you want me to override? Just override the base color and the normal, right? So I will say import all, and that is going to create that new material instance that is called master sword still. So I'm going to take this master sword. I'm just going to remove that. This is already attached to the master sword, so I can do enable them once again, and then bring them into the right place. So either you replace the material or you create a new material instance. Both of those options are fine. If you create a new material from scratch, then it's not going to be parented, and whatever changes I do to the master material, then all the children are in need to be modified by hand. So that's bad. I hit save, and now I don't need to scale the sword because it's going to be at the right size at the right time. So I'm going to hit play, and I will take this, and I'm going to walk towards it, and that is the right size. So far so good. I have my character in place and everything is in order. All right. So what is to do next? I'm going to be modifying the asset. This is the way that you really can just drag and drop assets from Maya and put them in here. But what I want to do is basically create a master material, create the sword and the texture files that go alongside with that, and then have everything inside of a single folder. That way I can move everything easily. I have the textures that I created in Photoshop just for the class purpose demonstrations, and then I have the materials. Now, technically speaking, you can create the textures, or you don't need to create the texture. You can just use the textures that are in the file, but then every single material that you create and every single material instance that you create is going to start as an instance from the master sword, which is going to look super weird. So in this way, I have a material that I can modify and directly, apply to the files. Later in the semester, we might be taking a look at more complex materials, but for now, this is a general idea. You create a new material instance, and then you say how you're going to be using it. So I'm going to go back down to content, and then I'm going to go into my third person. So inside of the third person, I'm going to have a blueprint, and then you get to see there's a BP third person character. And double click on that, and that is going to open this thing. I'm not going to go about all of the logic at this point. We're going to be exploring all the logic later, but this is basically what is going to be the brains of your character, right? Whatever you do in here, like you go to the camera input, you do the mouse input, you do press forward, backwards, you jump, all of those things are enabled here by default. This is just a template, right? You will see that there's some things that are already in place, like the touch input. So this is basically, you want to compile for a mobile phone. This is the only thing that you need to do. But there's 3 tabs here on the top. So this is the event graph. When an event happens, something is going to happen. The event is I press the jump button. Well, I jump, or I released it, or I stop jumping. So the next thing that is going to happen is this is basically just just a call. It's not like if I unplug this, say Alt and then click. It's not like I unplug this thing and that is going to run in the background. Let me move. It's not like it's going to keep on jumping forever. Gravity is still going to be kicking, but the character doesn't know that it stopped jumping. So there's a bunch of things that are going to happen in the background to try to compensate for that. And so the easiest thing to do is just keep this jump. But the general idea is here, like something happened, then the white pin is going to take you to the next one and it's going to execute something. And it does require some arguments. These are going to be the arguments. Get the character control, so I get to know what the forward vector is going to be. So that is the event graph. The next one is going to be the construction script. Oh, at construct, I want something to happen. So let's say something like I drag this out and say print string, and the string is going to be saying hello. So when I'm gonna have to move this out of the way for a second, but when I hit play, now you'll see that hello appears here on the top. That is because I change the functionality of the character. Every single time that I construct this character, that thing is going to say hello. So that makes sense. Now, the important part for us right now is going to be the viewport. Now, in the viewport, I can select a bunch of attributes to this thing. So I have the actual whole thing, the character. I have the capsule component, which is going to calculate the collisions with this. I have the arrow. This is just like in editor kind of thing. This is going to be showing you the forward vector for this character, but this is just like a view, a preview. You won't see this when you're running the game. The mesh character is going to be this thing. I can just replace my character with something else. So for instance, I have this one. So that is going to take a second, and it's going to be taking these for the mannequin, right? So there you go. I changed that now to be the other character, and that's it, right? So I can change these to anything else. The thing that is going to be driving the animation for these guys, as you can see, is going to be this thing. So if I do a different one, I don't know if that is, see, this one doesn't have the same animation class. So this is the original mannequin from Unreal Engine 4. But it's going to start compiling some shaders. So it's gonna take a while in order or a lot of time to show the actual thing. So still going quite fast, but I don't really need that character, right? So the idea is here, I can change this mesh to something else. Like if I want to make my character the master sword, I can do that. Oh, although I can't because that is a static mesh and this is a skeletal mesh. There's a difference implied in that. So point is, you can change the asset that it's associated with this. In my case, I want to just keep it by the default. So I'm gonna say back to the default. Oh, it's not nice, but it was Queen, right? So I'm gonna be selecting Queen, and it's gonna take a second to change that, but it's gonna be associated here. I can, in fact, and that's what I'm gonna be doing, take the master sword and attach that to the character itself. So right now it doesn't know how to place the animation because that thing was removed. So I'm gonna select this queen, and now it's the actual animation for that character. Here I'm gonna hit add, and then I'm going to be saying new static mesh. This is going to be the master, or I'm gonna call it weapon just to make it multi-purpose. So weapon, and I will be bringing the master sword. So either I select that under content, IGME 219, master sword, select that, and then click on this arrow to bring it here, or I can just look for the master sword and put it in the place. So now that it's associated here, I need to move it to the hand. But in order to move it to the hand, I want it to not just be on top of the hand, I want it to be parented to the hand. So I'm going to click on this. It's going to show me all the individual joints that I can have. This one is going to be, I know Link is left-handed, but I'm going to make this hand right-handed, right? Just because. So hand R. And now it's going to be associated. Whenever the character moves, it's going to be moving the sword. And then I can just push this forward and try to eyeball it. Now, this is quite large, more than a sword. It looks like a broadsword, so you need to handle it with both hands, but sure, works for me. I can make it smaller a little bit in here, but that is the whole purpose of making it, scaling it when you import it. So you don't have to eyeball it and calculate the right size later. But you can see that it's kind of hard to just position it in the right place. You'll need to disable the steps, but also you need to pause the animations. So I'm going to select this guy and I'll say under advanced, pause the animations. So pause the animations in such a way that I can just position the master sword in the hand. So a little bit like that. And it's moving quite fast for my purpose. That's good enough. I mean, this character is not meant to be holding the master sword in the first place. So wherever you place it, it's nice. Now, the important part here is be for next assignments, assignment number 3, you're going to be in charge of creating your own assets that you can potentially attach to a character. So the pivot point, this thing should be located at the handle and not really here. And the way that you do that is when you export 0 is going to be the place that is going to be taking this pivot point. So the idea is that you should have the pivot point where or 0 where the pivot point is going to be on the engine. That's usually a good rule of thumb. I'm going to leave that there. And if I compile and save it and try to run it like this, the animations, remember, were paused. So if I hit play, it's just going to slide with the master sword in hand, which is not really what I want. So I'm going to open once again the character controller. And in this case, I want to select the image once again and unpause the animations. So compile and save and that. And I'm going to hit play. And now the character is going to be running. Now it's, again, these animations are meant to be having the character running around with the sword in hand. So that's why she's cutting herself. So that's that. Now, for the purpose of this exercise, what I want you to do is show me that you have a screenshot with this. So Shift F1, as we did in the last exercise, go to the master sword, show me that this is an MI material, so that you have the instantiation of the file. And I'm going to be using my snipping tool. And this is going to be the thing that you submit for the exercise. So character with the sword in hand, the sword in the world, even if you don't rescale it, that's all fine. The master sword, the master material, the individual asset, and then the 3 textures. And then I'm going to hit file, I'm going to hit save. And this is going to be my E07 underscore Bobadilla L, and I'll say this is asset in engine. So that's what you're supposed to submit. All right, so those are gonna go into the individual descriptions for the file, so it's easier to know what you're supposed to submit. But that is everything for today. So definitely play with this. There's a bunch of things that are really nice in here. One thing that you remember from last lecture probably is that the asset is here, but it doesn't have any physics. So I can collide with it, but there's nothing else that I can do. I can select that and I can say something like simulate physics that is underneath let me hide my face for 1 second. That is going to be here under the simulate physics. And now that I have that enabled, I can hit play and then the master sword is going to fall and I can actually go there and kick it. So should be there and it should be movable. And that is basically it for that exercise, right? So submit that thing, and that is the only part that you are required to do. So that is it for this class and this exercise. Keep on modeling.